Hindu hate, and this is where I want to go back to what the NCRI report was talking about. Remember when they talked about online hate leads to real life consequences? And it was a very prophetic report because they published it in August. And literally 2 or 3 weeks later, we saw an explosion of hate against Hindus all around the world. We saw the Leicester violence in UK. There was the Kanhaiya Lal episode in India, and in the US, we saw temples come under repeated attacks. There was a New York temple that was attacked, I think, twice in as many weeks. And there was this Krishna Nair incident that I just talked about happened around that time. There were some Indian women attacked in the parking lot. So I think it's very important to realize that when you have a community that is being presented as less than fully human, as somebody that doesn't really deserve equal treatment, that they should really get by the reason of being human and by existing, you start to see a lot of problems. So we had that slew of attacks in 2022. And you've seen it continue. There've been attacks in Australia and unfortunate attacks in Canada. It's been like multiple attacks on mandirs. And now coming to California, there have been 3 attacks on California mandirs in just the last month. It's actually really shocking. And California prides itself on, being the progressive, home of diversity. And this is what's happening to mandirs there. And of course, no talk on Hinduphobia will be complete without talking about the biggest Hinduphobic hammer that is used against diaspora communities, caste. I know there's been a lot of discussion on this, so I'm going to just glance through this really quickly. But you can see that this caste issue, even though the California bill got a lot of attention, it's actually been building. And California is not the end of it. And of course, no discussion on Hinduphobia is complete without a mention of caste, because really, at least for us in the diaspora communities, caste has become one of the biggest tools to target us and really deposition us and the success that we have achieved. The California bill got a lot of press. I'm sure most people are familiar with it. But it was just one of the many incidents that have been building up to build to it. And honestly, it's not the end. We are fully expecting the issue to pop up in some other state. And we're kind of, they're not going to give up, because this has been one of the most successful ways of targeting Hindu diaspora communities. And it's a perfect example of conflating Indian socio-economic political problems onto communities that live halfway across the world. Hindus are 1 to 2% of the population in US and Canada. So to pretend that there is any way we could be replicating the issues of India, where the demographics and the dynamics are very different, into our communities there, where our experience is that of a small minority immigrant, it's just ridiculous, but that's unfortunately how it happens. Caste is a old and one of the most powerful weapons to target Hindus. And Equality Labs has weaponized it very effectively, thanks to a conflation of macroeconomic factors that has come about. Elizabeth Wilkerson's book, the sort of diversity equity movement that played out in 2020, and their successful conflation of caste and race, which again makes no sense when Indians listen to it. But in the US, in the West, they have sort of made this conflation that caste is to India what race is to the US. And we said that literally makes no sense, because you can have an OBC community from North India, and skin-wise, they'll be fairer than like a Tam-Bram community, right? But people don't want to listen to logic. It's the oppressor-oppressed binary. Nobody's got time to listen more than 5 seconds. And they're like, nope, you're wrong, you're oppressed. So facts really don't matter. So Equality Labs is basically looking for a way to weaponize this and to build it into law. Because see, again, as an organization, they can do whatever they want, right? The First Amendment, freedom of expression, if they want to work to demolish Hinduism, which is their stated goal, that's their right as a private organization. They can do that. The problem we have is when state-funded bodies like universities or the state itself buys into somebody's personal vendetta, right? I can say my goal is to demolish X. I have the right to do that. But if California is buying into my goal to demolish X, that's where the problem happens. So, or if the university says I'm buying it, that's the problem. And this is basically a way to to come after the Indian American, to come after the Hindu community, because anything you do, you can be depositioned on the basis of alleged caste discrimination, and then good luck recovering from a witch hunt that will follow, right? Maybe you will recover, maybe you won't, right, depending on your personal circumstances. But do you really want to live your life with a Damocles sword hanging over your head, where any action you take could become a caste quote unquote action, and you are guilty till you prove yourself innocent? See, that's the other problem with this whole situation, right? I make an allegation. In general, I have to prove. So the person I'm accusing is innocent till the state proves him guilty. Here, the situation has been flipped. We're saying that just because of your origin, just because of your faith, or because you happen to be Indian or South Asian in origin, you are more casteist, more oppressive, and more likely to discriminate than any other human group. That is what I ask everybody who supports. I'm like, do you really think that? Because if you think that, that's very racist at its core. To say that one set of people is inherently different and worse than another set of people, that's the core of racism, right? And that's what we should never accept. In fact, when I was fighting the caste law, so many journalists asked me, they're like, why are you against this law? Do you want to discriminate? I said, of course not. Absolutely any individual who has faced discrimination, they need to file a complaint, they need to get their day in court. But I don't want the state to say that based on my birth or my religion, I come from a community that is more oppressive. Are there bad apples among us? Yes, of course. There have been bad apples among us now and through history. And, and they will be, right? Because at the end of the day, Hindus and Indian Americans are also human, and they're bad apples in every human group. What we vehemently reject is the fact that this allegation and this broad assumption that Hindus or South Asians bring quote unquote caste with them wherever they go, or they bring oppression with them more than any other group. I think that is fundamentally what we object. And what I said, we ask for equal treatment, where, if you want to start insisting that everybody's networks must reflect, then everybody's networks need to be scrutinized, not just the networks of Hindus, right? A quick look at the data showed that while 25% of our network may be from one caste or another group has 80% of their network coming from their church. Nobody thinks that's bad. I don't think that's bad. I mean, everyone has the right to mingle with whoever they feel like, as long as we're not harming others. But with Hindus, there are all these extra guardrails being put. With Seattle, the city of Seattle, their law did pass, right? So think about the unfairness of it. The city of Seattle is going to be spending close to $200,000 a year on a person whose job it is to monitor South Asians in the city alone. I mean, that's discrimination. Not to monitor discrimination for some, like specific area, but to just say, okay, I'm going to monitor South Asian businesses and South Asian people. And that, I think, is, again, it's important for people to understand the difference between Indian laws and American laws. So I know in India, there are groups that are considered, that have different rights or whatever. That is absolutely not the case in the US. The Constitution treats everybody equally. So I'll give gender as an example. So in India, there is the Violence Against Women Act, right? Which is specifically against women. But in US, it's only gender. So a man can sue a woman for, saying I was discriminated based on gender, and a woman can sue a man. So it's both ways. And so when they are trying to pass these caste laws in the US, they're fundamentally trying to change the way laws are created in the US. Again, this is important because Indians living in India have a different framework, but we are Americans living in America.
So discriminating and taking away fundamental rights of a set of people cannot be called equality after.
Absolutely not. And the other problem with the California lawsuit, the Cisco lawsuit, was that the state started to define what it meant to be a Hindu, which is a fundamental violation of the separation of church and state. Right? The state has no business defining what it means to be a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew. It's just not. It's just something they're supposed to stay out.